Welcome to the Sparky Coach podcast. This platform was built by Sparkies for Sparkies. We simply exist to make business owners more profitable, or businesses more profitable and more predictable. So we want to work with people that work hard because we love working hard too, that work smart because you got to be on top of the business, people that are kind because no one likes a dickhead. Am I right? People who want results because that's what we're here for, right? And people who want to be part of a like-minded community. So if you're interested in hearing more about the platform, please reach out and enjoy the podcast. Sparky Coach, Lounge Pod, Cam and Crowe here, coming at you for a bit of an overhead discussion. And maybe it's not even an overhead discussion. Maybe it is. Maybe it's a cost of doing business discussion. And the cost of doing business at the moment is increasing. So if you looked at a standard quote, you're going to have labor, materials, and subcontractors equals X. X has a margin on it. It becomes Y. Y is the quote you send to the someone else, to the clients. So in terms of materials, wow, materials have they're going north. Conduit is as rare as a Tasmanian devil in winter. I don't know if they're
Tasmanian tiger. Tasmanian tiger. They're extinct.
They're as rare as a white elephant. So it's materials are going up. So if you're locking yourself into a price now that a job's going to go for 2 years, you got to be careful. The price of copper is going up. The price of general everything is going up. You need to be aware of that. We're going to get into that. The price of super is if you're looking at the price of subcontractors going up. If you look at your labor component, what makes a labor component? It is the hourly rate you pay your staff member. It is the super component, and it is the overhead cost per billable resource per hour. So generally speaking, it's 50 plus super plus your overhead equals your break-even rate. So if you're quoting jobs for 6, 12, 18 months down the track, the super is going to be fixed at 12% if you're in Oz. Well, we think it's going to be fixed pretty much. Your cost of labor is moving north. I think for the excellent people, it used to be $45 an hour was top. Now it's 50. Now it's 55. And depending on where you are based in Australia, if you're close to the city, normally more north. If you're in a high demand area or rural, it can be more north as well. And there's some areas that are getting away with not minimum wage, but lower because that's what the market is determining. And if you've got to buy a house for $400,000 or a house for $2 million, that's going to have a direct impact to how much you need to pay your staff members, really. So there's no arguing with that. Now, so you got your labor component, or your wage component, which is moving north a little bit, and your super is fixed, and then you got your overheads. So your cost of doing business per hour per person. And on the overhead component, your overhead component is made up of your operating expenses. So everything from advertising to accounting to bookkeeping to insurances, to business insurance, to car insurance, to Christmas parties, to vans owned outright, to 5-year replacement items, roll the scroll out. And your non-billable components, your non-billable staff members like you in the office or your operations managers in the office. Basically, everyone non-billable and operating expenses goes into a pool, and that determines your cost operations, and it gets divided by how many hours go through your company, and that gives you your overhead per resource per hour. And that amount is incredibly subjective. You would say there's people that are ripping a whole bunch of personal stuff through that shouldn't. There's people that are paying their partners in the office that's really not an on-costable item. There's people that aren't shopping around for insurances and they're paying huge rates over here. There's people that are outsourcing their marketing with no idea on if it's performing or not. There's people that are employing marketing managers with no record on, you are going to go viral. And it's like, viral is not going to help you when you can only travel 45 minutes from your door, right? So it's just so many moving parts in that from left to right. And even advertising. Is advertising uncostable? And if someone needs 10 grand advertising a month and someone doesn't, then someone can be significantly cheaper. If someone needs to employ a salesperson to sell labor materials and someone doesn't, then that person can be cheaper. So generally the overhead if you woke me up on a standard Thursday morning at 4 a.m. and just said, "What's my overhead?" I'd say, if you're, generally speaking, if you're running a decent company with a factory, it's $45 to $55 an hour. If you're sort of starting out and running through that 0 to 5 staff members, it's $30 to $45 per hour per person. If you're running lean and mean, it's 20 to 25. And if you're running heavy, full cooked vibes, it's 70. There's so many variables to determine that, and it's your overhead per resource per hour, where arguably the most movement is in your sort of labor rate. And then you've got how to make money. Some of us are making money from materials only. There's nothing wrong with that. So I think we move away from the labor rate discussion and into the net profit of a job discussion. It's a much more holistic view of it. But yeah, so many moving parts. How do you navigate the season coming up with changes of labor, changing materials, changing of fuel, changing of insurances, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to break it open and discuss accordingly. Cam.
Bit to unpack there, Crowe man. I'm going to touch on labor first. I just want to unpack a little bit here. Is that super, like you touched on, currently in Australia is fixed at 12%. I want to just make it, I guess, be aware probably is the best way to describe it. So if you have a tradie that is going from $45 an hour to $50 an hour, that the superannuation is also going up as well, because 12% on $50 is more than 12% on $45. So just being aware that if you're giving a pay increase to a staff member, that then their superannuation is directly proportional to what that pay rise will be. I think that's really important to understand. A lot of people don't understand it, or maybe forget about it. It's an often overlooked number. Obviously, that's where the Beast Estimator comes into it amazingly, because it literally is just passed on. So you just update the pay rate and it will update everything else for you. So probably just wanted to touch on that in regards to the labor rate, that it is obviously directly proportional. The other thing I want to highlight here with superannuation moving forward as well is that as of 1 July this year with the superannuation is that it will be required to be paid weekly. So currently it's essentially every quarter that it needs to be paid, but it will be same day, essentially. That is what they're calling it. I don't know what the correct terminology off the top of my head is, which
cash on delivery.
I should probably know exactly what it is called. But it basically gets paid when you pay the wages. So I think this is really important, sort of a bit of a segue to touch on here, is that cash flow is obviously super important here, because that this will impact some people, because some people probably operating in like a bank, and then they do a lump sum payment to the clearinghouse. Whereas that $500, $1,000, $2,000, $2.5, $3, $4, whatever it is, depending on the size of your business and superannuation, will be gone the same day. So it needs to be paid. So it is an additional immediate cost to your business weekly.
I always also want to highlight, I think it's going to really help people, because
I agree.
I remember my quarterly super, I think at the max, the super was $2,500 a week. And you look at it and you're like, hey, that's 30 grand a quarter. I mean, I just decided to pay it weekly back in the day. I was like, I'll just pay it weekly. It seemed like the smart thing to do. You got to think where the ATO is moving with this. And I think it's a good decision, because too many people rack up a massive tax debt. They will probably, you'd have to think super is going to go from 12 to 15% in the next 5 years. And you're going to have to put two and two together and be more or less in the next 5 years, all your income tax will be payable weekly. There's no doubt about it. Like, it's just going to be, if super's payable, what's the tax requirement on that? You'll probably pay that or a portion of that. You'd have to think, because everyone's just racking up these ungodly monthly or quarterly bills and then paying for it down the track. And the ATO is in a big commitment to sort of get some money back. So that's not gospel or biblical, of course, that you should essentially yeah, but I think that's not a bad thing. I think that would actually help. I think if you got your your wages paid, and you're like, okay, what is the PAYG component of that? What is the GST component of the revenue collected, and what's the estimated? I think if you put that away aside across somewhere, you'll be in a good stead. So yeah. Anyway, continue.
So yeah, just a little, unpack, be aware of that side of things around the labor side of it. So materials. So obviously the big kicker here has been the PVC cost associated with it, or petrochemical related items have gone through the roof. Now, like Crowe said, it's conduit is as rare as a Tasmanian tiger at the moment to actually get. Obviously, it is the COVID version of toilet paper that everyone needs it, and we will hunt you down and find you the people who are hoarding it in the back shed, under the front stairs, insert location here on a farm in central west New South Wales, potentially. However, so in a percentage price rise, the conduit, huge. I don't think there's any understating that. It's give or take somewhere between 25 to 40%. So somewhere.
You ever think about all the conduit you treated with contempt over the years, like the ones you tape to the bazooka, or the one you're like, I'll just leave that on site, and it just gets damaged and kicked and scratched, and you're like, it doesn't matter, it's only 25 mil conduit, plenty more where that came from. And now it's like what you would do to have all the conduit you treated with contempt back in your hands.
The 1 meter disregard, just like joining them together with couplings.
I don't want to say who this was, but one time we were doing this aircon job for a subcontractor who shall remain nameless, and he got all the off-cut bits of pipe and just was soldering them together, like a meter here, 2 meters, 3 meters, and 4 meters, and then there was a leak, and it was like, where
do I start?
Where do you start? So same with conduit, everyone's just coupling and everything, 1 foot, 2 foot, crazy. Anyway, continue.
So obviously conduit's the immediate impact. There's obviously going to be other rises along the way. I know that some other suppliers have just had their annual or biannual price rise of X amount of percentages. So, some of it is a surprise and caught us off guard. Some of it's been happening since, Jesus was a little boy. It happens every April, or it happens every September. Like it's known. So I don't think you should be caught off guard like that. One thing I do want to reference with the conduit side of it all is the impact overall. Yes, it's a high percentage increase. However, if you're using 4 lengths of conduit on the job, we're probably looking at maybe $4 to $10 across the board of the increase. So I think perspective needs to be put into it, rather than just like, rolling with the masses of like, this is the doomsday, it's the end of it. We need to tear up the contract we have with the client and tell them it's going to go through the roof, etc. And we need to have a conversation about the $4 we're missing out on. If your job is so tight that the $4 extra or $5 extra on those conduit lengths is going to blow you over, I think we have a greater issue here that we can delve into later around like the way you're costing your particular job. I don't want to underplay it, but I also want to put a bit of perspective on it, that how much actual conduit is involved in the job, I think needs to be flagged here. If it is just a small underground run, it's just, that is what it is. If you're putting in 7 stories of conduit and you're using, 100 to 300 lengths per deck on that, there's perspective here that, hey, we need to have a look at it, what's happening. Now, things that you can combat it with potentially, the horse may have bolted on this a little bit in the conduit realm, but I do know a number of people who communicated early and they were able to procure some stock levels and then lock in stock levels for in a month's time or in 2 months' time. That has been done. So if you are in a situation where this has occurred with some of the material, I think we'd be looking at a forecasting sense. Same with copper as well. Copper prices are rising. However, the forecast is potentially somewhere around 30% by end of year. So if you have some projects on the go, have a look at having some discussions with your suppliers to see where you can get it locked in at, and have a look at regarding, hey, can we buy a pallet of this or a pallet of that? One thing I want to have a discuss while we're talking about the materials is sometimes having the discussion with the potential client around, hey, this is where we're at with it all. We're looking at getting these items ordered and sorted now so that we can have them for your job. Because don't forget that the construction company, the builder, insert client here, is there's an element of surety that they'd be happy with as well. So if you can be like, hey, I can get this stuff now, I just need to pay for it up front, there's a discussion where they would be more than likely coming to the party, be like, hey, we're happy to pay for those costs to lock in the material, or we're happy to pay for a portion of those costs, or hey, how can we have that conversation with them around it? Because it means that their job can continue to move forward and that it can occur. So just being aware. So I think a lot of it is awareness, and Crowe's banged on about this forever around that the money's made and lost in the office. So if you're spending all your time on site and putting your head in the sand over this, rather than sitting in your office and forecasting out to be like, hey, we actually need this material for this particular work fronts that we've got coming up, you're on the front foot. And in my experience, if you're a reasonable person, you're generally going to be working for reasonable people as well. And two reasonable people can have a reasonable conversation and get an outcome that is applicable to everyone. In regards, so jump in, Crowe.
I was going to say, it's interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts here because, you know, like obviously it renders a lot of price books irrelevant. And generally speaking, you wouldn't have a price book for deck work. You would just have like a labor materials component. That's 3 guys on the deck for 3 people on the deck for a week or 7 days with typical $3,000 of conduit, which is now $4,000 of conduit. So I think the interesting thing is if you haven't started a job yet, you're going to want to factor in future prices of all this kind of stuff. No, you don't have to do any job you're uncomfortable with from here. That's my big thing with people. You don't have to do it. If you are doing something, make sure that you talk about the payment schedule. So maybe you put your switchboard early. You know, typically you would always look at a payment schedule and move your switchboard early and lighting supply early to get your deposits or full payments before delivery on site. So you weren't ever waiting for money. I think you got to look at now putting cable in there early and putting conduit in there early, or just materials in there early. Yeah, give me $50,000 early, or $100,000 or $20,000 early, and then I can lock in and secure and order this. I'll remember my last pallet of 2.5 I got for $84 a roll, and that was 2019. Like it really wasn't that long ago. So it's just shifting so far north. So all your pricing, if you're working via a price book or flat rate or whatever, it's sort of irrelevant unless you got a direct import for your wholesalers straight in there.
Yeah.
And all your labor and materials context need to change now. So a lot of times, especially if you've had a lot of experience quoting, you can look at a job and be like, that's $7,000, that's $70,000. You get a really good feel for something straight off the bat, particularly under $200,000, I would say. But now that's got to shift. And it's be like, get your materials components lumped in early. So that's if you haven't started something yet. If you're working for residential Betty, and I would be, these prices are valid for 7 days. So it puts pressure on Betty to lock it in, or start getting deposits for things so you can start to pay for materials early. It sort of locks everyone in. The hard thing for me is going to be, everyone's like, oh, you can put a rise and fall clause in your contract. And you mentioned before, 2 reasonable people can come to a reasonable discussion. But a lot of times, you're not signing my contract. I'm signing your contract. So yeah. I can't just take a client as a subcontractor. So electrically, you're subcontracting to the principal contractor, which might be a school, it might be a commercial client, industrial client, builder, whatever. They're not signing my contracts. I'm signing their contract. Everyone's like, oh, I need to improve my terms and conditions. Well, your terms and conditions are probably irrelevant unless you're the top of the pyramid scheme. If you're not top of the pyramid scheme, you can forget about it, right? So it's actually, the interesting thing is going to be, how do you have that discussion when you've locked in a price already for a job in the next 12 to 18 months that has begun? Anything not begun, not started is free reign for me. Doesn't matter how hard that conversation is, you need to have it today, right? The times are changing. If you sign something, that's going to be interesting. If you can be like, if I quote it, I've got to go worst case scenario. I've got to take the risk, so I'm going to go worst case scenario. and then you might lose a job. And I think you've got to be okay with losing some jobs on that. And then, we've all got those clients we know of that wouldn't accept a rise and fall clause. And you've all got those clients, that you could make a call at any time of the day, like, hey, conduit's going up. They're like, yeah, send me the bill. So it just puts emphasis on me from my end. You want to be working with those people that are really cool to deal with. That, hey, the price of this has gone up. I know we priced it here. It's moved it there. Is that cool if I send something through? Yeah, of course. We love working with you. Cool. And I think if you can get those clients on not a per job, but going psycho to hammer you down to bare minimum. If you can get the clients that want to partner with you for the next 20 years, that's a vibe. Like, it really matters, maybe more than ever. It matters who you're working with in terms of staff and who you're working for in terms of clients. It really matters. They're the ways to drive revenue forward and drive profit forward. The two major levers are clients who you're working with and staff who you're working for, and staff who you're working with. Two major levers. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. What advice would you have? Let's say someone's knee deep in a job and the price of copper's rising, price of conduit's rising. They've got conduits to throw in, they've got cable. Like, how do you go about even approaching that person?
So there's two things there that need to have a discussion around. Is first and foremost, you need to have a discussion with your supplier. And so this is where I think it's really important to have a strong relationship with at least 2 suppliers, bare minimum. So you can have a conversation with them so they can provide you real-time information and real feedback. Because you might go to supplier 1 and they're like, we have no conduit for, X amount of time and we don't know when it's coming. Then you might have a conversation with supplier 2 and they'll be like, hey, we have this on order. It's due this particular date. We've locked it in. It's been, guaranteed for it. We can allocate you this much of that particular order. Our next order is here. We can allocate you this. The price is going to be X amount of dollars. And then you can go through, find out the material. So the big ticket items you look at the moment is obviously, let's just use the scenario that we've sort of been going down with, is that there's an element of a fair bit of cable on the job, which is a given. And then there's probably an element of fair bit of conduit. Let's just say it's like a multi-res style installation with the decks and all those sorts of bits and pieces associated with it. To have a conversation with them, they may come back to you and be like, hey, so conduit's the only issue. We've got heaps of our adapters and fittings and they're at what the price was yesterday because they're still sitting there at the purchase price that we bought them 6 months ago for, that are just sitting there. So these are the numbers there. So this is really good to have the relationship. So then you can go armed with the information to sit down and have the conversation with your client to be like, oh, hey, this is where we're sitting. This is what we've got guaranteed coming to us. These are the lead times around it. This is what we don't have, or this is what the unknown is. The cost difference is X amount of dollars. Now, me personally, I'm of the opinion that you just be honest with them. Like, you don't need to sit there and add 50% onto the dollar value of it. You're not here to retire off it here. You're here to make sure that you don't lose. That's just my opinion. Other people may think different. I'm probably more of the sense of, I want to be working with these people for 20 years, not 20 minutes scenario. So go armed with the information and then sit down and just have an honest conversation with them, because I think it needs to be looked at in a way that if you're midway through the job and it's underway, is that it's in the best interest of the client that you're working for to continue the relationship with you, particularly if you've ticked all the boxes and you've been easy to deal with and you've been getting the job on time. You've been meeting the deadlines and delivering and all those sorts of things. Probably a different story if you aren't meeting those deadlines because you're not on the front foot, you're actually on the back foot. But you've been good to deal with, is that you can have that conversation, because the cost for them to replace you will well and truly exceed any of the money that they'd be looking at outlaying. So I'm a big believer in just being prepared with the information at hand to be like, oh, hey, we've been able to secure this. This is where the cost difference is. Or the other scenario to obviously look at here is to be like, hey, we have secured this. We need the payment for it though. So they're the two scenarios. What's upcoming, but you need to come armed with the information. That's really, really important.
Yeah, and it's I referenced this in a podcast. I don't know if it'll come out before or after this, but you don't often reference paying your wholesaler on time as important to the lifeblood of your business. But if you're paying your wholesaler on time and you're good to deal with, you can have some really good quality conversations with them. You might even pay upfront for something they have to order. So I just want to encourage everyone, pay your bills on time, be excellent to deal with. You know how good it feels when someone pays your bill on time. So treat the wholesalers with that same admiration or same reverence or same respect, and watch them prioritize you. It's we have to prioritize people who are providing labor and materials for our business, because that's what we're selling. So it's absolutely huge. I'd encourage you that. I would also say you've got to be careful. I said this before. I want to elaborate. You've got to be careful who you're working with. If you're working with someone who's going to be part of the furniture for 20 years, great. If you've worked with someone who you sign up to a job you were uncomfortable with for a contracts admin that has no respect for relationship, they just want the cheapest price because they want the most profit, that's going to be very, very hard to go to them with materials increases, because they've locked it in, they've fixed it off, and they're like, yeah, well, we don't care, that's your fault. So there's never been a better time to work out who you're working for and if you like them. And also, the sharks are going to be circling. They're people that are on top of the price rises, the fuel rises, the material rises, the labor prices. If you're on top of your numbers and you're quoting for 18 months, 2 years in advance on these larger jobs, your price will be higher. So the sharks, aka contracts admin, aka developers, aka people in it for just money, they're going to be circling for people that aren't aware of all this stuff, that are burying their head in the sand. They're going to be circling for the cheapest price. And when they find it, you're not getting out of that. You're not getting out of that lightly. So be very careful. A call from a contracts admin in today's context is not a sign from the trade gods. It's a sign they're looking for the wandering sheep to attack. These people are wolves. They're wolves looking to attack innocent sheep. And I want to say, you don't have to be an innocent sheep. You can also be a wolf. You can also be like, no, get stuffed. I don't know you. You're not going to owe me $300,000. You as a contracts admin or project manager, your lifespan in that company is 3 to 5 to 7 years. You're going to be moving companies like dominoes around. So you're not going to have any loyalty to me. I don't have any to you because you're going to move around. So it's like, I just want everyone to be hyper alert and hyper focused. It's not the time to be signing large contracts for people you don't know in a volatile and vulnerable state. Rant over or rant beginning?
No, maybe midway. I think there could be some more coming.
Halfway. Or intro.
Want to touch on price book here. I think obviously you touched on it may not be relevant to where the price rises have been. I think this is probably where I'll get my Simpro tattoo out and proudly show it, is that I think a really good job management system with integration with your suppliers is really, 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 really important. Because
I'm genuinely shocked at how many people don't have that linked.
I know.
Or don't have it linked to three wholesalers to achieve the best price on a simple press button.
I know. I am shocked by it too. So, I mean, I guess like if you're not sure if it's sorted, hit me up. I'll be able to have a look at it in 2 minutes time and tell you. If you're interested in learning more about job management software, Joey and I would be more than thrilled to give you an explanation around it, because there's no point in pricing on 1986 prices in 2026, because if you haven't done the math yet, that's 40 years ago. So it's not going to be relevant today.
If you're working on, say, what they would call a price book or flat rate or something, and it's just a number, that's for $3,000 or that's for $200, and there's no labor materials break up, it's an alarm bell in itself. Like what is the labor component? What is the materials component? What is the margin on there? What is there a buffer? I think is huge in this world, and I think this is a time for everyone to get a bit savvier and a bit smarter and be like, if you've just been borrowing money from the ATO or borrowing money from the wholesaler or using that like cash, it's time to change, I think, and it's time to get your head out of the sand and into the future. So, but yeah.
So yeah, price book's really important. So one thing too is I'm going to reference the money's made and lost in the office again here, because the hard work put into your price book done correctly and well from the beginning pays off down the track. So I want to reference this here, and I've seen this a lot, is that a price book or a pre-built item is made up of labor and materials, which Crowe just touched on then. So your labor, let's just call it 1 hour, right? So that 1 hour of labor then gets referenced against whatever labor you want it to be. So that 1 hour could be $5 for the hour, or it could be $500 for the hour. It's referenced, right? So if your wages rise, which then in turn your charge out rate needs to rise, it just becomes directly proportional, because that 1 hour never changes. That 1 hour gets referenced against whatever the charge out rate needs to be. The other one is the materials. So materials is really important. So let's just say the item is made up of, let's just say a PowerPoint, a C-clip, some cable, and some fixing. So I'm going to reference multi-res here again because it's easy. So you've got some plugs to shoot into the ceiling and some cable ties to fix it off with. So those items, those 6 items are, hey, we need 10 meters of cable, we need 1 C-clip, we need 1 PowerPoint, and we need 5 cable ties and 5 plugs, for example. So those items, when that 10 meters of cable goes from $1.50 to $1.80, right? That is 30 cents a meter. So now that pre-build has gone up $3 without you even trying. It just in a cost sense. C-clip goes up 10 cents. It's now $3.10. The PowerPoint goes up 40 cents. It's now $3.50. And the cable ties and the plugs, because they're made of PVC, they've gone up 2 cents each, which I know might not seem like a lot, but when you're using 1,000 of them, it all starts to add up. So it's automatically gone up for you. Where a lot of people get into the danger zone, and I'm referencing a movie here, which I don't know what it's called, but it's the danger zone.
Top Gun. Top Gun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All I could think of was Maverick and Goose. I couldn't think of the actual name of the movie. What I've seen a lot is they have the labor and then they just enter in consumables or sundries, and it's about $20 of it, right? Thing is, in your job management system, is your sundries and consumables never go up. It's a fixed cost. You've entered that in manually and it won't go up, so it won't change. So then the other flow on effect from here is that when you go to ordering and things like that, it becomes more difficult in the future. So just want to touch on the price book there. If we go back to considerations now, we've touched on labor, we've touched on materials here. I want to just dive into your operational costs of the business, which make up a fair chunk of it all. So fuel's the first one I think that everyone is aware of. Now, if you haven't noticed that fuel has gone up recently at the Bowser, that is a good thing. That means you don't travel much, which means it's probably not going to have a gigantic impact on you. If you've noticed that your fuel bill has gone from $3,000 a month now to $8,000 a month, it means that you and your team do a lot of traveling. So the fuel cost will have a massive impact on you if you are doing a lot of travel for the work that you do. It won't have as a dramatic impact. It will affect you. I'm not saying it won't, but it's directly proportional if you don't leave the Sutherland Shire because you don't need to fill up as much.
So some of our members, the most extreme example is doing solar in a semi-rural town, traveling 1,000 Ks a week with a trailer. So that's going to blow out massively.
And another trailer on the back now with diesel.
three trailers. And then another one of our clients doesn't leave his town, rarely travels more than 5 to 15 minutes because it's a small town. So obviously 2 extreme ends of the spectrum. You might land in the middle, but it's good to know where you land. The other thing is you don't have any context on the fuel rise yet. It went like halfway through March, it would say it started to go up.
About 3 weeks ago, yeah.
So you're not going to have any context for the price rises until your April close month. And then once you close that month, you'll be like, okay, that was pretty typical. Do we need a buffer on that? Whatever. But generally speaking, it's a $3 to $5 an hour difference per person, pretty typically. So your rates need to shift north. Do you just chuck a fuel allowance on that, a fuel tax? Do you up your small job travel fee? Do you just up your hourly rate in general? I feel like the cleanest thing to do is up your hourly rate in general, because everyone understands. It's like we're going from 120 to 130 or 120 to 125 or 130 to 137, whatever your rates are. It's irrelevant to the fact that the cost of your profit in that has gone down because the fuel's gone up. And it's a significant change. It's 1.5 times what it used to be, at least, maybe close to that. So you've got to be really conscious. What you used to fill up for $200 a week, now it's $300 a week. That's $100 a week difference. You only work 40 those hours. That's $2.50 difference per hour, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting. Just like simplistically speaking, the profit has just gone down. So huge on the fuel realm. Specifically, once again, if you've locked into those jobs for 18 months and they're an hour away, that's going to have a significant difference. Are you able to talk to a client about that? You might be. You might not be. I think the government, they've mentioned they're going to come out with some sort of prop up scheme, which just to help out small businesses. That time will tell on that.
Relief.
So that'd be interesting to see what they come up with. And then that presents another issue if you've raised it up, but then also getting the kickbacks over here, that's going to present its own issues there. So if put it this way, if you're solely referencing my hourly rates going up to via fuel, and then the government decides to subsidize it, you're going to have a hard time maintaining that. Like if you reference our operating expenses have gone up, the cost of running business has gone up more holistically, you're going to be able to have a cleaner chance to keep that. That's my 2 cents on the whole thing.
I like it. So touching on the fuel then around that too is that another cost that you will have probably noticed that may not have existed before from suppliers will be delivery surcharges, because their cost of delivering the materials via vehicle or insert here. So it could just be a van, it could be a truck, it could be a ute, it could be a flatbed, depending on the type of material they're delivering. Theirs has gone up. A lot of them have just gone to, I'll give some examples. So it could be a dollar threshold under $200. It's just a flat fee of $20 or something, insert here. Others it's just a fee, full stop. So every delivery is a particular fee. Others are just putting a percentage on the particular value of the job, so to speak. So material. So say you purchased $1,000 of material. It's like, hey, we're just going to put a percentage on top of it of insert here. Percentages have sat anywhere between 10 to 17.5%. A couple of suppliers, because I see a lot of emails fly around every day of the week, is that with the fuel excise reprieve that the government came out and announced recently, then some of them dropped that back down to a percentage that was lower. If you're using hiring plant and equipment, there's surcharges on top of the fuel as well. So don't think... So I think that's just going to become the new norm, if I'm being perfectly honest, until we get some kind of clearer picture coming out of that. So then moving on is the overhead side of things. So which is your an overhead, your operating type of expenses associated with your business. So things that come to mind is your accounting costs, your insurance costs, your general office expenses, any sort of subscriptions and things like that you may have. So these are costs associated with, I guess, doing business, and these need to be considered. So I think my general feeling around it a lot of the time is we sort of get set and forget in business. It's just a reoccurring rolling, hey, yeah, it's come around again. It's let's renew it, or hey, we just got to pay it. So I would strongly recommend first and foremost that you all have a look at where your operating expenses sit and where do a deep dive into it. So pull a P&L from the last year of doing business and dive in to see where your costs are associated with it. And quite simply, have a look at it in a sense of, do we actually need that versus can we live without it? If you can live without it, sweet, get rid of it, cancel, remove it. A lot of these things grow over time and we become unaware of them. They just reoccur on a credit card that sits in the filing cabinet that no one sees the light of day until we need to update something. Then what you can do is do a deep dive on it all. So I'm going to probably go out on a limb here. I'm going to highlight a few things that probably people get caught out on a lot in regards to costs that we see often that we probably go, that doesn't seem correct. So one of them is accounting costs. I will say that, and I'm happy to say it, is that does the service match what's being A, provided, or B, what's needed by the business? So that's one that is one that we see quite often. Insurance is another one. A bit of a set and forget scenario. I'm going to say it's probably never been easier to get a second opinion. Reach out to a couple of brokers. Hey, what have we got options here to have a look at? Dive into it and do a bit of research yourself. Hey, what's involved? Like firing off and doing you can go through and answer a series of questions and get quotes really, really quickly online, or you can send them out to a number of brokers to see. I think it's really important. It can often offer a bit of perspective to be like, oh, hey, there is savings to me. A fresh set of eyes can look at it to be like, hey, were you aware of this? It's been good sometimes of like, you may be actually undercovered, which is just as bad as being overinsured as well. So if something was to occur. The other one that you can have a look at is software subscriptions. That's a really easy one to have a look at. Other one is telephone or communication device, like just how you're paying to communicate. So internet, phones, data, whatever it is, insert here. Other things that you spend a fair bit of time utilizing or spending money on each year is generally your office expenses. So, hey, are we getting a good deal on reoccurring office expenses that are coming in, or do we just need to keep an eye on them? Like, are they necessary? Costs associated with it, your PPE for the business. So where do you get your clothing from? I know this sounds ridiculous, but it pays just to get a different opinion, because I would say the average business is spending thousands of dollars a year on PPE, because most people are getting clothing every 12 months at a minimum. And the way you present yourself is the way you reflect yourself as a business. So they're just a couple of things to keep an eye on that you can definitely have a look at to reduce it. If you have a premises that you're working out of, what utilities are being supplied to the property, just quickly have a look at, hey, can we get a better deal with our electricity? Can we get a bit better deal with the rubbish removal that we're having? Like little things. And I guess it comes back to what we always talk about when you're closing out the week. A good day equals a good week equals a good month, etc., quarter, year, is that don't dismiss the small things. So the compounding effect. So it might be like, $100 a week, it's $5,200 a year. So like if you can get a compounding effect across the board of a few savings here and there, is that you might put yourself in a better position than you've ever actually been in before, just by being a little bit smarter and a little bit savvy with the way that you run your business. So that's just a bit of thought of operation.
It could be $100,000 day. Like a 2 hours a week could total $100,000 in savings a year. It's really not that far-fetched. Whether it's a better interest rate on your home loan, whether it's better rates on insurances, whether it's finding those hours you missed, whether it's increasing your price per cross here, whether it's linking your purchase orders to your job management software, whether it's getting quotes back on time. A lot of the times it's a really, really simple fix to make a very dramatic result. So the interesting thing that I'm going to land with is I see one member, we do unlimited cost operation sessions here at Sparky Coach. Like generally speaking, you'll need 2 a year, but as your business changes, you need to look at it. So I was looking with a member yesterday. They were this time pretty close to this time last year. They were at 40 grand a month. Then it was 45 in December, and now it's at 52. So it's basically increased $10,000 to $12,000 within 12 months. The interesting thing is, too many people are raising their operating expenses without referencing your overhead per billable resource. Now, in the increase of operating expenses for him, we've had an increase in administration staff, and we've also had an increase in billable resources. So his overhead per billable resource has retained within the $50 range per hour. So in the context of his business, 45 is an excellent result, 55 is a blowout. So you gotta reference your increase in operating expenses shouldn't just blow your overhead per billable resource out of the water. If you increase one in terms of operating expenses or admin staff, can you increase the hours component across there to level it back out? If you push yourself too high in overhead, you do the same hours for less money or the same jobs for less profit, and it can really cook you. And then you're like, why am I losing all these jobs? I got to price too high. You got to price too high because you're too expensive. And you're redlining your business, and there's no buffer, there's no realm for profit among a standard job, and it can get a bit crazy. So you've got to stay right on top of your overhead per billable resource, which gives context to your break-even rate, which gives context to how much you can perform a job or not perform a job for. So just make it really simple. Find a fault, find the missing link, set some time aside, and boost ahead. What's your wrap-up?
Just be aware, I think, and be considered across the board that there's three main areas that contribute, obviously, to where the business is sitting at. So there's your labor associated costs, there's your material costs associated with it, and then your operating expenses. So be aware of where they're at. Don't bury your head in the sand around them. Be considerate around it, because if you understand where the costs come from, it allows you to make informed and educated decisions of where you can lean into and when to lean out of a situation, rather than just throwing a dart at a dartboard. And I mean, we talk about it in the close the week a lot of the times, is that just don't be dismissive of the small things, because the compound effect, and that's probably one of the biggest things I feel personally I've learned over my time, is that it's the little things that actually create the compound effect around it. And I mean, look, it shouldn't be any surprise if you speak to anyone in the financial world, they bang on about the compound interest effect. But just don't be dismissive of the little things, because they can have the really big difference around it all. And just be aware, be interested, and have a look into it. So dive in where you're sitting at, build the relationship with the supplier. Like, I feel too many people have just a real transactional relationship with their wholesaler. Whereas when you really, really need them, you can lean into them and they'll back you to the hilt. So that's one scenario there. And just be interested in where your costs are going. What are you spending each month, and why are you doing it? Do you need it? So have a look at it, see where you can tighten the belt a little bit. But it's not so much about always just saving money. I think it's about just being aware of where the costs are associated with your business.
Love it. All right, look after yourselves out there, look after your numbers, and we'll see you guys soon.
Take care. Bye.
That's a wrap on another podcast. Whatever you're doing, don't be too busy to stop and check if you're making money. And above all else, you know the rules, be kind. See you soon.